Lori, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining me this morning. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and I want to share your story with the listeners. But before we get started, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about what's brought you here and what you would like to share with the rest of us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Lori Hadef, and I'm the president of a nonprofit organization called Make Our School Safe. I am also Alyssa's mom. My husband and we started Make Our School Safe after the tragedy at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, where we started this organization. And I'm here today to just help share my story and help to let other people know how to make schools safer.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just for the listeners that aren't aware, where are you located and where was the school where the shooting happened?
So I'm located in Parkland, Florida, and this shooting where my daughter Alyssa was murdered was at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, which is located in Parkland, Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was that time like for you? Because I know you're obviously making a positive change now and you're trying to use your grief as a way to prevent anything like this happening again. But what were some of those early moments like for you, if you don't mind talking through them and sharing with us?
6 years ago, it was Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2018. And I received a text message saying shots fired at Stoneman Douglas High School, kids running and jumping the fence. And I immediately had the sense of loss that came over my body. And I just got my car. I drove as fast as I could to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. And at that time, I knew that there was a shooting, but I had no idea that Alyssa was one of the 17 victims. I got to a space. It was far from the school a little bit, but near Westglades Middle School, and Alyssa's best friend, Abby, came over, and I remember looking at Abby and then looking at the space next to Abby, and because they were always together, so I was like, "Where's Alyssa?"
Mhm.
And she said, "I don't know." We were trying to figure out what classroom, what building Alyssa was in, and then Abby got a text message, and I asked Abby, "What is it?" She said, "Alyssa was shot." And I just immediately fell to the ground. And in that moment in my life, I blocked out for probably about 3 months. I didn't remember that period of time, that most, like, traumatic point in my life to learn that my daughter was murdered in an English classroom. I got up and I just started to run towards the school to try to get to my daughter, but I couldn't. And then I ended up going with a police officer to different hospitals at the emergency room, thinking my daughter was shot, that they were taking her to the hospital. Unfortunately, Alyssa wasn't there. And then the police officer ended up taking me back to the reunification center. And there was hundreds of people running around. They kept putting the people that couldn't find someone in these spaces. And eventually we were in this big ballroom, and I just remember a lot of people there, lots of food. I don't They didn't know what to do for us. It was extremely cold, and I was just wearing this, like, black tank top, and I was freezing, and the Red Cross came over, and they put a blanket around me. Later that night at 2 o'clock in the morning, we were pulled into a room to be told that by the FBI that Alyssa was shot and that she was unrecognizable. Alyssa was shot 8 times. She was recognizable, but it was this horrific moment in my life to find out the most awful information. And as a parent, this isn't a normal way that this should happen.
No.
My Alyssa should have been burying me, not the other way around. And I always say that I would have taken the bullets for Alyssa. Like, I would have been that in there, and just for her to be here now and to be living, I would have given my life for her.
Yeah, and I know you're obviously doing this work, so you've probably shared this story, but I thank you for being vulnerable. And as a parent, I can't even imagine what it must feel like. And I guess what was that process like after for you, the grief? And obviously, we all have our own process with grief. We deal with it differently. But what was that like for you after maybe the days and months leading up after that incident?
Yeah, so I never dealt with losing anyone before in my life like that. I lost my mom's mother, my grandmother when I was 13 years old, but I never lost a child, right? I never lost a parent. So this was my first time dealing with any type of major loss like this. And I didn't know how to deal with the pain. I stopped eating. I I'm Jewish, so after we buried Alyssa, we had a shiva and we had thousands of people coming to my house. And I had a hugging injury
Mm,
because I was hugged so many times that the back of my neck was sore. And one thing I think definitely has helped me with my grief is that being able to continue to talk about it, whether it's
mhm,
through interviews or the media interviewing me, I was able to talk about my story over and over again. And I think that was one thing that definitely helped me. I also had gone for mental health therapy pretty soon after the tragedy, and I know for 100% certainty that helped me. The day after the shooting, I went to the Everglades because I felt like that was the closest place that I could be with God to
mhm,
ask why Alyssa. And there was this big orange bright sun in the sky, and I had this sense of that Alyssa was in a okay place.
mm,
And my mom and we went to the morgue because I nobody told me I can go. I just went because I wanted to see Alyssa. And they told me that Alyssa was there, but I couldn't actually see Alyssa. But they came back with an 8 by 10 color photo of Alyssa's face. And I took that picture and I had it in my pocketbook. And I was carrying that picture in my pocketbook around for weeks
right,
after the shooting. And in one of my therapy sessions, I told my therapist about it, and she's like, "Okay, we need to take that picture out of your pocketbook."
right,
But and I did. I think also what helped us as a family for my husband and my 2 boys is that we got a golden doodle dog. Her name's Roxy,
yeah,
and she's a therapeutic dog and definitely has helped us with our healing process. We got her when she was a baby, and Alyssa was my oldest child.
yeah,
So the boys were younger than Alyssa, and so for them to first time they ever had a dog,
mhm.
and I think it was very healthy and a good happy to come into our family to help us heal.
Yeah, yeah. And just want to explore that further too, like just a couple of things. First of all, not only were you dealing with your own grief, you still had to be a mother to two other children and then also be there for your husband. How were you able to do all of that? Not only take that time for yourself to go for therapy and make meaning of whatever had happened, but then also be a mother and a wife.
So one thing I have to say is I have a very supportive family.
Mhm.
My mom and dad are extremely supportive, and my friend base was there for me every step of the way after the shooting. I always say I never took drugs before, but my mind, I was like on drugs, just spitting crazy. I was in that when there's some type of like whether it's a shooting or some type of tragedy, your body goes into fight or flight.
Mhm.
Like, some people sit back and they just hide and they do nothing, but I went into this fight mode, but it wasn't like I went into fight mode for 1 day. I went into fight mode. Honestly, I still feel like I'm in fight mode 6 years later, and I think that fight mode that so when I played soccer. I also taught Alyssa how to play soccer,
Mhm.
and my coach would say to me, "If you get knocked down, you gotta get right back up." His
Mhm.
name was Bill Tilley, and so I've taken that concept and I have used that within my life now as an adult, and when this tragedy happened, I got knocked down. I
Mhm.
got the wind taken out of me, I got the heart taken out of me, and I got back up and just continued to fight, and not only by making creating a nonprofit organization, Make Our School Safe, I also ran for the Broward County School Board shortly after the tragedy, because I knew that in order for me to make an impact and make a difference, I needed to have a seat at the table. And I've been on the school board now for 6 years, and currently I'm the chair of the school board. But I definitely have to say that my family and my friends helped me with my other 2 boys and just every, like, kinda step in the process just to keep me going and continue to thrive.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and obviously having family can be that's the thing we need sometimes in these moments. The other thing you touched on, and I see quite a bit, I know I've experienced it, when we go through something difficult, and obviously we can't compare situations, but often people will get bitter or resentful. And I know you said you were asking God, like, why my daughter? Why did this happen? How were you able to not fall into that state of bitterness or resentfulness or resentment, sorry, towards the world?
My daughter Liz was only 14 years old, and I feel for me that Alyssa lives inside of me. I'm Alyssa's voice right now, and Alyssa would want me to continue to be making change and also keeping her memory alive. So last night, my husband and I, we went to this brewery where this band, a high school band, they
Mhm.
actually raised $250 for Make Our School Safe. And they said, this was so sweet. They said, "Alyssa, this is in honor of you." And I know that Alyssa's looking down and was like, "Yes, yes, mom, that's great. That's impactful." Continue to keep her legacy.
Mhm.
And through Alyssa's law, the panic button law that we've now passed in 5 states, it's continued to keep Alyssa's legacy alive. I'm here well, I guess to say, like, I don't know why this happened. I can't say why Alyssa. There was over 3,000 students that day at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, and Alyssa was one of 17. But I'm gonna continue to be optimistic, and I'm gonna continue to fight for change, and I'm gonna continue to be Alyssa's voice because I have to do it. I owe it to Alyssa,
Mhm.
and I believe Alyssa would want me to keep going.
Mhm. Absolutely, yeah, and that's how you've been able to find meaning and purpose through this. And perhaps a good time now to talk about Make Our Schools Safe. What is the objective of Make Our Schools Safe, and what are some of the things that are happening with this initiative?
Thank you. So our website's makeourschoolsafe.org, and we've helped to raise money to put school security, different projects into schools like fencing, bulletproof glass. We put money into mental health programs, school security box when you come into the school. We've also have Make Our Schools Safe clubs in our high schools where students help to create a culture of safety, that they are safety minded and are the voice for the safety at their school. If they see something, say something, and they can help prevent violence from happening before it happens.
Mm.
We've had kids, unfortunately, bring loaded guns to school in their backpacks, and they tell other kids about it. And we've had where those kids have gone and told the SRO officer, and they've prevented violence from happening before it happens. Also, the Make Our Schools Safe clubs in high schools, they've helped to raise money for different security initiatives like Stop the Bleed kits and putting a Stop the Bleed kit in every one of their classrooms so that if there is a bleeding emergency, the student or teacher could apply a tourniquet to the student's arm or leg and help to save their life before EMS gets on the scene. And then thirdly, Make Our Schools Safe focuses on passing Alyssa's Law nationwide, which is panic buttons in schools. So if there is, whether it's a medical emergency, which we have all the time, or an active shooter situation, we want to empower our teachers to be able to push their panic button, whether it's an app on their phone or a badge they wear around their neck that they can push, or a hardwired panic button. And it's directly linked to law enforcement. So
Mhm,
they can then pull up the cameras in the school, get eyes on the scene, and it's geofenced the area so they know exactly where to go. But it's mass notification. So everybody that has the panic button will get alerted that there's an active shooter situation so they can more effectively respond in an emergency situation.
mhm.
And we've passed Alyssa's law now in New Jersey, New York, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. And currently, right now, we have Alyssa's Law at Governor Cox's desk in Utah to be signed into law any day now, with the school safety bill, $100 million allocated for funding for that school safety bill.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And what's the plan? I'm assuming obviously you want to get this law passed nationwide. And then a follow-up question, do you see an opportunity to expand this outside of the United States?
So, yeah, absolutely. Our goal is this for Alyssa's Law to be passed nationwide. We have a federal bill called Alyssa's Act that would help to do that. So, if you're a congressman or congresswoman, we'd love for you to be a co sponsor of Alyssa's Act so that panic buttons become a standard level of school safety protection in every school across this country, just like we have that standard in our banks, in our federal buildings. They all have their panic button. So we need to be able to create that layer of safety at every one of our schools. And there's multiple layers of safety that need to be implemented. And this is just one way to have mass notification in a life threatening emergency situation. And yeah, so absolutely, this is something that could be everywhere in different countries, not just the United States, because it's the concept of it, mass notification in any type of life-threatening emergency is crucial for everyone to have their panic button.
Mhm. And why do you think that it's taking so long? You would think with all the school shootings that have happened over the years, like this is not something that's new, right? We hear about it quite frequently, unfortunately. Why has it taken so long for some of these laws to be?
It's our legislative process. It has to go through different committees and the House and then the Senate, and every state has their own little version of their legislative process in their state. I don't know. You would think that one mass shooting at a school, we would fix many problems, not just making sure schools have panic buttons, but it takes time. And
Mhm,
I would say that since 2018, the families have passed a lot of different legislation or helped pass, like the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act, for example, in Florida. And we've made significant amount of change within the last 6 years. And sadly, I think what happens is that people get into a bubble. They become numb to these school shootings, and they also think that this is never gonna happen to them.
mhm.
So, we lived in this Parkland bubble. We
Yeah.
never dreamed it was a very affluent community. We never thought that this would happen to us. And sadly, it did. And so, what I would say to people listening to this, that you need to make sure that your schools have their panic button. Make sure you're locking your doors to the classrooms, to the outside of the building. We need to make sure that we are implementing these layers of safety protection now in your school. And don't think that this is never gonna happen to you. Sadly, it's not if the next school shooting is gonna happen, but sadly, when will it happen?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I think everything you're doing, it sounds amazing and great work. There's perhaps more of a philosophical question, and I don't know if you have the answer or if you've even thought about it. I'm sure you have. Why are we not being more proactive in terms of, you mentioned there's children going into school with guns in their backpacks. How are they getting these guns? Why are they getting these guns? What are your thoughts around all of that? Well, I know your focus is on school level, but just some thoughts around that.
Yeah, so sadly, they're just getting the guns from their parents at their house.
Mm,
And parents need to lock up their guns. They need to be responsible gun owners and make sure their guns are locked up so their kid just can't take it and put in their backpack. Parents also need to be very proactive to look in their kids' backpack every day, be that first line of defense to make sure they don't have knives, guns, vapes, drugs, that they're not bringing these things to the school. We need help. We need parents to help us to help keep these things out of our schools. Also, parents need to know what's going on their kids' phones, what their social media, who are they talking to, know their passwords on their kids' phones and check their phones and make sure that they're not talking to bad people and they know who their kids' friends are. We need parents to be more a part of the connection and conversation and help us to keep these weapons out of our schools. Some schools are implementing metal detection to prevent one way of preventing these things from weapons from getting into our schools, just like we do with our airports. It's a continuous conversation. And again, we need parents to be engaged, involved, and lock up their guns.
yeah. So again, what I'm hearing is parents have a significant role in this, especially if they want to ensure everyone's safe in schools, right? The other piece you touched on was what Make Our Schools Safe is also doing, and perhaps it needs to be broader and something we need to discuss more is the mental health aspect of it, right? And why do you feel like mental health is an important piece to the work you're doing through Make Our Schools Safe? And then perhaps even on a broader level, outside of what you guys are doing, why does mental health need to be factored into all of this?
Yeah, so mental health is a huge aspect of helping to make our schools safe. When a kid breaks their arm, we see the cast around their arm. We see that something's wrong with them, but we don't know what's going on in the brain. We can't see that. And our kids are coming to us, to our schools. They could be homeless. Maybe they slept on the street that night. Maybe they didn't eat anything for breakfast. Maybe they were hit by their parents or abused in some fashion. And so all these things are going to then spill into the school day and they're going to act out that trauma that they experienced at home now in school. So it's very important that we give the students mental health resources in school, out of school. After the shooting, we started Eagles Haven here in the community. And it's a place where students can go and get therapy. And there's different types of therapy, whether it's art therapy with horses or dogs, mental health therapy, there's exercise. We want to give the students that mental health resources, but also give them those resiliency skills to
Hmm.
be able to help them in their life as they move forward in school and then become hopefully healthy adults.
Hmm.
And then when a says, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot up our school," or something like that, schools need to be doing a behavioral threat assessment.
Hmm.
And based on that assessment, then the school devises this safety plan. And part of that safety plan can be some type of mental health therapy to help that child.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think on a deeper fundamental level, I think for the child itself, like you have to wonder what's going on for them to be able to even think of that and the amount of hate and anger they may have that's being directed outward. So, eh, putting aside the impact it has on you or it has had on other parents, what are your feelings towards the kids that are doing these actions?
One thing I would say is that they don't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm gonna shoot up a school." This is like a long time coming, and they also tell other people. They a lot of times they say it on their social media.
Mhm,
So what I would say is that we have to take these threats very seriously.
mhm,
We have to make sure that if someone sees something, they say something, that they're reporting it. There's a lot of different see something, say something apps like Fortify Florida, the Safer Watch app, where kids or adults can report something that they see on their social media. And then law enforcement has to follow up to make sure that person is not an active threat, that is a behavioral threat assessment is done on that kid because they are it statistically has been shown that they say something that they're gonna do this.
mm. Yeah, for sure. And I suppose with the work you're doing, where do you see this going moving forward? I know you talked about some of the legislative work that's happening and some of the other states that you're involved with and the larger goal of getting Alyssa's law passed throughout the nation. But where do you see this going beyond that? And obviously, this is something that you've taken to heart, and for you, it has a lot of meaning because this is what you owe to your daughter. But beyond some of the work that's already happening, how do you see this being pursued further?
Our goal also is to get we call it MOS clubs, the Make Our Schools Safe clubs in high schools, but in every state across this country. We know that students are the voice and really can make an impact and make a change. So we would love to see our MOS clubs open up in different high schools all around the country. It's a free program. They just have to reach out to us at makeourschoolsafe.org. And then also we would love to have different hubs of Make Our Schools Safe in different states around the country. And this way our footprint can grow. And we can also get more people a part of the school safety movement. I think it's as parents, we just believe that when we send our kids to school, that they're safe, that all these safety measures are in place. Who would have not thought that their school didn't have a panic button like our banks have it? So I think it's important also for parents to be actively engaged and know what is these layers of safety that are implemented into their schools and if they are locking the doors to the building.
Mm. And what are you hoping to achieve with these groups that you're talking about in terms of the schools? I'm assuming it would be the students that are participating, but what's the objective there?
So after the tragedy happened, if you remember, the students really spoke up about gun control, March for
Hmm.
Our Lives. And when I saw that, I wanted students to be speaking up about school safety and really make it their own. And I truly believe if students in high schools can come together and really own what the safety at their school looks like. If they see a door being propped open, they're
Hmm.
going to say something. Why is this door being propped open? This door needs to be locked. So it's just safety minded students being the voice for safety, specifically at their school, and ultimately just creating a safer environment at their school.
Hmm. So what I'm hearing is again, giving more of that agency to the students to also play a role in this, because at the end of the day, it does impact them. Now, there's this other piece too, them knowing all these measures are in place definitely helps them feel safe going into school. Do you feel there could be an element where there might be an aspect of fear around going to school, just thinking about all these things? Because I think you touched on it. Often when these measures aren't in place, you just assume you're safe. But then if everything around you is happening and there's all these safety protocols, do you wonder that could have a an adverse impact on the children going to school? I'm just curious if that's been something that's discussed.
I think knowing how many school shootings have occurred in the United States, kids probably already have that fear in them. But if they can be empowered to have a voice for safety at their school, I think that it would help to take that fear away and help to create that resiliency where they know their teacher has their panic button. They know there's this stop the bleed kit in the classroom. They know that their door is locked to the school and to the classroom and that they have a school resource officer on campus. So I think that education factor, empowering them with knowledge will help to take away that fear of not feeling safe at school.
Mhm. And what are some ways people can support you in terms of what are you seeking in terms of support? Where are you needing assistance? And what are some ways people can do that?
Thank you. So our website's makeourschoolsafe.org. You can go and you can donate to the organization or you can join our email list. So we send out emails every 1 or 2 weeks and just knowing what's going on with the organization. We have 3 major events each year. We have our golf, tennis, and Live for Alyssa Gala, which is coming up March 18th. And whether you can attend or you can become a sponsor, that's greatly needed all the time. We have annual sponsors. So if you're a business, you can become an annual sponsor and it's on our website. We have our Make Our School Safe clubs in our high schools. So whether you're a parent or a student that is interested in starting a club, you can fill out the form and we will connect with you. We have Lexi's our Moss Club director. So she would reach out to you. We have a set curriculum and tell you more about how to start the club at your school. Definitely follow us on social media, Instagram, Make Our School Safe, Facebook, Make Our School Safe 17. And we like to say we want you to become a part of the school safety movement.
Thank you for sharing all that, Lori. And are there, I know we covered quite a bit, but do you feel like there's anything else that you would like to add that perhaps we weren't able to discuss or talk about? And do you think, and you think that would be a benefit to the listeners?
So, one thing I say is your voice is your power. And so by using your voice and asking those tough questions of your principals and school board members and making sure that there is layers of safety that is implemented in your child's school, it's very important to have those conversations and ask those tough questions because ultimately you want your child to be safe in school.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I admire the work you've done. And I again thank you for your vulnerability, coming on here and sharing your story, and not only with me, but with the listeners and all the work you're doing. I think that's incredible to come out from what you had to deal with and then to be able to make a change for positive in the world. I think that's incredible and very inspirational. So I just wanted to thank you for all of that and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.